And I guess I did overlook the Flatwoods Monster in this book. It is here. It says the Flatwoods Monster, Frankenstein with BO.
Sounds like they do a comical version of stuff, huh?
Right. Okay, give me a second here to make sure that we're all squared away on YouTube. Hmm. What I'm doing at the moment here is I'm looking at the YouTube because the people that come in may have questions, and there's a delay between what we're saying and the YouTube channel, so I'm making sure that we're on the same
Gotcha.
thing here. And to everybody that's joined us on the YouTube channel, how we doing? Thanks for joining. Make sure to share this out. Let's get everybody in here. Gonna have a good time tonight.
A little bit that light's glaring.
Yes, Tyler, you made it. Thanks for joining, buddy. All right, Dave, if you're ready, we're going to hit that record button and dive right in.
Yeah, man. Let me fix this because this. There we go.
Yeah, let me know when you're ready.
Whenever you are, man. I'm just
All
trying
right.
to get that glare off the picture for you.
All right, here we go. Hey, everybody, this is Sean Coletta with It Came From the Podcast. We are in episode 2. This is a rare Friday episode. It was actually my mistake. I plan these out to be on Thursdays if needed, but that's okay because it's Friday night. No more work for the rest of the week, and I'm pretty excited. We got a few people coming into the YouTube chat, watching us live. Thank you guys for joining. For those of you listening, don't forget that aside from listening from this podcast, you can also watch every episode live on YouTube every Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and sometimes on Thursdays at the same time. We're going to cover everything from cryptids to UFOs to the paranormal. You name it, we're going to cover all kind of topics. We've got a lot of guests lined up. In fact, all the way through December. This past Monday, we had Mike Angus of Southern Heat Paranormal and Beacon TV. That was pretty awesome. He was the first guest, so he set the bar for today's guest. Don't worry, the bar was set really low, so it can't be any much worse. Next week, we head into our first doubleheader episode. We've got J.D. Hill, followed by Dustin Perry. Dustin Perry of Ghost Hunters and Ghost Hunters International. Amazing human being. I love him to death. I appreciate every time that I get to spend with him and have some fun. So anyway, tonight's guest is an investigator, producer, researcher, speaker. He has been featured on many different TV shows, including Expedition X, In Search of Monsters, Paranormal 911. He is the founder of Real Supernatural and Dave Spinks' World of Weird. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Dave Spinks. Dave, thanks for taking the time out to be with us tonight.
Hey, Sean, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Hey, I appreciate it. And when I talked to you here just a while ago, you said you got something a little special going on tonight. And behind you is not an office. you are in a very special location. Why don't you tell us where you're at and what's going on there tonight?
Yeah, so what we're in a place called the Laux Mansion in Scottsdale, Pennsylvania. Uh, uh, Very old Victorian mansion built in the 1800s. My better half has ties to this town. She's from here. This is her family's old mansion that is now run by the Historical Society. And we do what we call ethereal excursions, where we take folks to these haunted locations with us, and tonight's one of those nights. And so happened that I had the podcast scheduled with you, and I said, hey, I bet Sean would like that we do the podcast live from the haunted mansion as we're here.
Exactly. And that gives everybody watching on YouTube the opportunity to kind of keep an eye in the background and see if anything happens that we miss. So, yeah, it sounds like a really cool place. How old is the house?
It's built in the mid to late 1800s, so
Okay.
quite old.
Okay.
It's in very pristine condition too. I mean, this place has a lot of really cool features, and of course, a building that old has a lot of death and energy in it. And that's what we look for in these haunted locations. So we've come here numerous times over the years, and it's a very active place. So if you ever want to come with us and investigate it, you get a hold of us on our social medias, and we'll tell you how. And you just look for our posts on ethereal excursions when we're having events up here.
Very cool. Very cool. I love old buildings like that. At one point in time, for a couple years, my second home was at a haunted location like that. It's a 130-year-old former funeral home, and it's called the Bell Mansion. It's out here in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and it is a beautiful place. It's funny because you had a different camera angle earlier when we were talking and looking in the background. I mean, it
Yeah.
seems like the uh, same style of home on the inside, but looks very, very beautiful. And so, yeah, if you guys want to go head there and investigate, I know for me, you're about 8 hours away, so that's not too bad. But another great location to you can't get enough of new locations and great locations on the map. So reach out to Dave; he'll hook you up. Tell him Sean
Yeah.
sent you. I don't know if it'll get you anything, but tell him Sean sent you for the hell of it. Um, so yeah, so Dave, you've got quite the resume. I have in the previous podcast I was on, and even this one, a future guest I have scheduled. Some of them are kind of narrowed down to one category. I'll have a paranormal investigator, or I'll have someone who is I don't like using the word expert, but maybe very well learned in a certain field. So you've got so many categories to pick from, but I want this to be the first episode where we talk about cryptids. And
Sure.
in particular, I want to talk about something that you've had uh, a big thing in involvement with, and that would be the Flatwoods Monster. First, I want you to talk about the film. Let people know about the film and where they can check this out, so that after this interview, they can go and watch that film. But then I want you to tell me about the Flatwoods Monster. Where did it come from? What's this idea? Where can it be found? And is there any evidence to prove this? Because my big thing, and I've gone in circles with people about Sasquatch and Bigfoot. There is no way, I believe, there is absolutely no way in the world that something like that does not have the potential to exist. It has to. Even driving a couple years ago, driving to Pennsylvania, when you come over those hills in the mountains and all you see are miles and miles of forest, you can't tell me there's something out there like that. You just can't. It doesn't make sense to me. But let's talk about the Flatwoods Monster. Why don't you tell us all about that one?
Okay, well, the Flatwoods Monster is essentially a UFO case. With a creature that was sighted on numerous, not just one night, but numerous nights. Okay. So there's a lot to this story. We would literally need probably 15 of your episodes to cover the entire thing, because that's how
We
in
can make
depth
that
it
happen. 15-part series.
So September 12th, 1952, a group of school kids were playing football at the school in Flatwoods, West Virginia, when they all observed a fiery object come overhead. It wasn't like a meteor though, because guess what? It slowed down, changed direction, and then came to set down in what they called in those days the Fisher Farm. They lived just right up the road from their house. That all the kids that were playing football, they ran up to their house and told their mom, "Mom, we saw this fiery object come over, and it slowed down and almost stopped, and then hovered and landed. Looked like it landed in the Fisher Farm." Well, where their house was literally you could walk out the front porch and look up onto the Fisher Farm. So they all got together, and then there was another boy at the house that was their cousin who was 19, and he was actually in the National Guard. So they grabbed what flashlights they could, and they all went up to the Fisher Farm, popped the cattle gate, and went up looking for this object because they, to them in 1952, they were like, "Wow, what is this? Was this a meteor, or what did we see?" So as they went up to investigate with their mother, some of the boys they walked up this narrow path, and on down in the right side of the path there's a gully. The field was really high, tall grass on the right, and it hasn't, hadn't been mowed for hay or anything at this point. But as they got up into and on the left was a tree line of woods. As they were walking up there, they probably got about 100 yards up the field, and it wasn't pure dark when they started off, but as by the time they got up there, it was dark. They got overcame with these noxious fumes, and they all started coughing and choking, and their eyes were burning. And then one of the boys heard a noise. He turned to his left in the tree line, put his flashlight on, and there they observed what is now known as the Flatwoods Monster, a 10 to 12 foot high being of some sort that looked like it was in some kind of metallic suit that had portals for eyes, and the like the inside was lit up like there was something inside of this metallic suit, like some kind of being. And the eyes, they said, it came out like beams of light from the inner light inside the suit. Well, and it went as they saw this, they all turned, and of course, 1952. You can imagine, you see something like this, it had to be a life changing experience. I
Yeah,
mean, they
for
turned
sure.
around and hightailed it back out of there. Uh, and they said Mrs. May, the mom, she leaped the cattle gate in a single bound. That's how scared they were. And cattle gates are really
Yeah,
tall.
yeah.
So, and then this whole just haywire thing happened. They called the cops. The cops were already out on patrol. The military was already in there looking for a downed aircraft, and there's this whole cover up ensued. Government agents came in, Men in Black type scenario. Were warning people, to don't talk about it. There was a cover up. Oh, and then they brought in the so-called experts. Oh, they just saw an owl. It wasn't this. Well, I don't know about you, but I've never seen an owl that's 10 or 12 feet tall or
I
any
am
kind
not.
of
No.
of that matter. So, um,
Well, let me ask
so
you a
this whole,
question right there.
yeah.
So after they experienced this and went back to the house, how long did it take before the military and the government started showing up after the event?
So a guy at the time, his name was Colonel Levitt, and he was in charge of the Special Forces Unit in West Virginia, mind you, National Guard Special Forces Unit. They were already down there before, because when Frank did the timeline, he interviewed Levitt several times over the years before he died. But so what Levitt did was separate his company in half, sent one group of them down to the Elk River where to look for this downed aircraft. Well, that was a cover
Mhm.
story, right?
Sure.
The other group went covertly on the backside of the Fisher Farm and came in on an old logging road. And then this is after, they had already, the people had been there, went back up there to look. With the reporter came with them the second time they went back up to look, armed this time.
Hmm.
Levitt had already been in there by the second time the people came back with one of the boys and some other the mom and everybody else. During all that chaos, the boys that were affected were at home sick, throwing up, and the whole 9 yards. I mean, they something physically affected them to this point. So Levitt was ordered by the Pentagon, Colonel Levitt, to get up there, see what was going on, collect any evidence, and send it back to the Pentagon post haste. Right. So what does that tell you when the military was there that quickly? They were tracking these objects.
Hmm.
And there
Right.
was more than one object, okay? And there's so much
Oh,
to this case. It was a definite cover up. It's even bigger than Roswell, for that matter. People just don't realize it because it was swept under the rug. That's why I told you before the show when we were chatting that, Ficino spent 30 years of his life on one case, and that's the case. And his book about it is phenomenal. I'm from there, so I was privy to a lot of information that other people don't really know because locals in our area, they don't take kindly to strangers.
hmm.
So they don't want people, especially they were ridiculed, the original eyewitnesses, the families, everything. But there was a second event that happened the very next night with the Snatowski couple who was from New York who had gone to Ohio to visit their family, right? And when they left, they decided to take the scenic route back home. They wanted to drop down into West Virginia and go back up and around. Well, they had no clue this had gone on the night before. So they're driving with a brand new baby in the car with them. They're driving down in an area that is called Strange Creek, oddly enough, and their car just suddenly quits. Now, we know from many abductees and UFO eyewitnesses that when they encounter these craft, what happens? Their cars and other electronic devices seem to go haywire and quit, right?
Hmm.
So he knew he had the car, had just been serviced before his trip. There shouldn't have been nothing wrong. He got out, inspected the car, couldn't find anything wrong, checked all the connections, the battery terminals, everything. Car would not start. At the same time, this was going on. All of a sudden, they became like choking and coughing because they were overcome with these fume like situation, just as the family the night before was. Of course,
Hmm.
they didn't know that at that time. So as they were, dealing with that situation, Mr. Sinatowski noticed a whitish glow off into the woods, and that seemed to be where this noxious fume stuff was coming from. So he kind of went over towards that direction and went down off the road and into the woods a little ways, and then that's when he saw what he described as an oval object. He compared it to the old globes on the street lamp from the old days,
Okay.
that
Yeah.
color scheme, but it had a purple hue around it. And he saw this thing floating in midair, and it was fairly good size, like the size of a Volkswagen,
Mm.
and it was just hovering there. So of course he was awestruck by this and started making his way towards this object that was floating in the woods. As he got closer, he said in his description, he said that it felt like his entire body was hit with pins and needles, and he started becoming profusely sick, throwing up, and he was almost like incapacitated where he could not move, and
So
he struggled to
like
make his
immediate
way back.
radiation poisoning.
Yeah, so he struggled to make his way back to the vehicle, right? And as he's stumbling and bumbling back to the vehicle, he sees his wife looking at him from inside the car in the passenger window, but looking past him. And he said she let out the most blood curdling scream you can imagine. And he turned to look behind him because he knew she was looking behind him. And there
Right.
was this creature coming at him in some kind of, the bottom part of the creature was hovering like some kind of hovercraft situation. And from the waist up, you could see this creature, and it was like a reptilian snake looking creature in this upper portion of the craft. And he made it back to the car, got in the car, stumbling and bumbling with the keys, grabbed his wife and new baby. In those 1950 cars, those things were tanks and they had
Yeah.
huge leg room. So they all got down and under the dash of the front of the car and hid because they didn't know what to do. And he, after a little while, he also said he fumbled around in his glove compartment because he had a camping knife, and that's the only weapon he could find in the car. So he grabbed that and they huddled down. After a little while, he peeked up above the dash and he sees this creature in front of the car. And he described these long, spindly looking arms coming out of this thing. And it was like it was inspecting the car, trying to figure out what the car was.
Mm.
And after a short while, the thing turned and just glided back to where the craft was. And the family come back up and they were watching and they see this craft lift up a few thousand feet in the air, start swinging in a pendulum like motion, and then shoot, it was gone. leaving a trailer like Sparks and stuff behind it. A few minutes later, he's trying to start the car so they can get the heck out of Dodge. It starts up
Mhm.
and they get out of there. And he only gave that interview one time in a now defunct men's magazine. And other than Frank talking to him many years later over the phone. So
Wow.
that was 2 nights. And then there's a whole nother scenario that goes along with it. They call it Bashful Billy up in Parkersburg. That they, there's another cover up, excuse me. I'm having some allergy issues. Sorry about that.
Oh, no, you're fine.
So they they some people saw some stuff in the sky, and then they found what they described as a burnt woman's body there in Parkersburg. And then people were reporting seeing this lizard-like creature all in and around Parkersburg, and this was like a week or so later. So many people think, including Frank, that this was all connected, which we know for sure the first and second night was definitely connected because
Right.
when they described the bottom part of that craft, the reptilian type creature was in, it matched perfectly with the bottom half the original eyewitnesses saw the night before in its description. Now, this time it didn't have the upper portion of the suit on for whatever reason. So, and then it goes on for during that whole situation. Mrs. May and the boys were interviewed all separately. They were asked to draw pictures of what they saw separately, and this was almost like by the next day. They had them in there, had them all separate. The police were taking interviews, and Ivan T. Sanderson was in there doing stuff, along with other people, UFO experts, so to speak. They were also interviewed by government agents that had ties to Blue Book. So they
Mm.
actually mentioned Mrs. May told Frank that when he was interviewing her and hanging out with her, that the two agents said, "Well, we wonder what Ed's going to think about that." Well, if you know who Ed is, that's Edward RuPaul, the head of Project Blue Book,
Mm.
And so you had all these different things going on. They flew Mrs. May and the older boy who was in the guard up to New York and to be on this really big talk show at the time. And then they had an artist draw what they saw, and that's where you see the famous picture that was drawn. You'll see it in Frank's stuff, even on some of my stuff. I've actually held the real picture in my hand, which is privately owned by a family in Flatwoods. So
Huh.
it's very like there. You can probably count it on one hand how many people have got to do that since that happened,
Mhm.
and I'm one of them.
Yeah,
So
that's cool.
the interesting thing was they did that show, right? This was a big talk show at the time. It was nationwide, real big, millions of people tuned into this show. Just a week or so later, that show was canceled. And
Wow.
a lot of other things happened over the years. And like I said, we could talk about this case. I mean, it's so in depth,
Yeah.
so many
Y-
different things, aspects of it. So, they
it's
call it cryptid because it's basically an unscientifically documented creature, right? But essentially, what we're dealing with here is some type of extraterrestrial creature, possibly, and craft. So, pretty interesting. Um, I have a passion for that particular incident because I'm from that area. My mom's first cousins went to school with all those boys and those kids that saw that thing. So I grew up hearing how terrified everybody was of this creature that was roaming the woods of
sure.
West Virginia and near Flatwoods and Braxton County. So it's a
Huh.
near and dear case to my heart. And one of my books is called Real West Virginia UFOs, and I wrote a big section of that book is part of, about the Flatwoods Monster and many other really insane UFO sightings in West Virginia over the years.
Huh. It's interesting, that story because
And that's like the
normally,
little needlehead part of that story. I mean,
yeah,
it's
I mean,
so
it sounds like there's so much more involved in that. But, the one thing I think is interesting is that this is not being talked about as a crash. This is being, an actual visitation, which I think is interesting.
much more than a
But
visitation, though. It was actually when you get in depth with Frank's books and everything, and I mean, listen, when I say Frank, because he is the man on this case, he spent 30 years of his life investigating, researching this case. Um,
mhm,
he's got government radar operators that were there, and they tracked multiple objects coming in off the East Coast that night. He's got the people that were doing that job for the government in his book. He's got the Blue Book document, or Project Blue Book documents. He's got numerous government people that said, "Yeah, this is what I was doing, and this is what we were doing that night." So what it was, and this is just like I said, just the nuts and bolts, tiny bit of this story.
Sure.
The Air Force had these new missiles in the Navy that we were they were super top secret. These new guided missiles that we were using on our aircraft. Well, if you look at anything when it comes to UFOs, there was a huge wave in 1952 all over the country, especially the East Coast primarily. And our pilots were ordered to chase these things down and shoot them down. Because why? Technology. It carried on over from Roswell in 1947. Our pilots were, from that time on, were ordered to try to push these objects down to the ground, get them down on the ground any way, shape, or form. If you can't, shoot them down, right? Numerous pilots died chasing these objects in our airspace. And they had these new missiles that they were trying to keep top secret. The theory is that they actually hit one of these things and got it to where it was having problems, because when they saw the object in Flatwoods, there was dripping stuff coming off of it. It was like spitting and sputtering, making all these things like it was shot, like it was hit.
Right. Okay.
The theory is all these other crafts came in from all these different directions. Frank's got it all on this massive map. It's phenomenal. With government experts, when I looked at the map at his house with him, I was like, oh yeah, it's plain as day. You can see it. So numerous objects came in, and it was like a rescue mission, because this thing was either malfunctioning or we hit it and it was malfunctioning. So there's so much
That
more.
makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's so much more to this, and that it would blow people's minds. And my job is to keep this case going along with Frank. I mean, the stuff he got should be in 2 or 3 movies. It's phenomenal stuff. But everybody wants to steal his stuff and use it for their own stuff, or not paying him to get his information. The man spent 30 years of his life, didn't even get married, because he put everything he had into this case. So I highly recommend it. His books, the second book is called Shoot 'Em Down, and the other one is the Braxton County Monster, the cover up. And you can find it on Amazon and anything. I gotta plug him because he's the man on this, man.
Hey, absolutely. That's what this is about, for sure. One thing that I think is crazy is, we talk about these cases, especially going all the way back to the 50s. They get this Flatwoods Monster case. You've got Barney and Betty Hill. You've got so many famous cases going back over the years. And as the years have gone on, we're now in a state where disclosure, UFO disclosure is a big thing right now. And the thing that I find absolutely stunning is that people are talking about these encounters. There are video from military aircraft of these unknown objects doing ridiculous maneuvers. The evidence, it's right in front of everybody's face. And people just go, oh, that's cool. Whereas 50, 60, 70 years ago, people were like, oh my God, this is a life-changing thing. I am forever changed. What do you think has made that change? Why do you think we've just become, because of things like Hollywood and stuff, do you think we've become just more desensitized to that? If we had spacecraft landing in major cities across the world, do you think there would be a huge panic, or do you think everybody'd be out there taking pictures with their cell phones and going to TikTok with it?
Nowadays, I think it would be more cell phone type stuff. But if you look at Frank's book, Stanton Friedman worked hand in hand with him on that book, on those books. Stanton Friedman on the cover, yeah. So you've got Stanton's considered one of the top OG UFO guys, and he's in the book with Frank. He helped Frank get some of the Blue Book information, so I highly recommend it. But yeah, I mean, back in those days, that was all Martian, spaceman, this, that, and the other.
Like behind me here, sci-fi movie poster stuff.
I mean, we all grew up on the old, the Martians are coming, and Orson Welles did, the whole radio
War
show
of the
that sent
Worlds.
everybody into a panic.
Yeah.
I mean, War of the Worlds. And Hollywood, and I think also the government too is involved in it. We know they are in Hollywood and whatnot, and they drip feed this stuff to us for many generations now. Because I feel they do that because it is desensitizing us to the panic mode of it. They know it's real. They know that they have made deals with these beings, whatever they are. I think there's multiple ones. Some have been on this planet since before any of us were here. I think they
Right.
do have underwater bases in the oceans. Just because of the Navy people I've talked to. I was in the Air Force as well. I grew up on Air Force bases. Oh, did we freeze?
You-
Hello? Hello? Uh-oh. Got technical difficulties going on here. Of course, when we start talking about government stuff. Let me see what the signal looks like. Oh, I'm good. Hello? Let's X that out, go back in. We still there, man, or what? Try this again. You there?
Yeah, that was weird.
Of
The
course, we're
first thing I
talking
did
about
was
government, talking about
first thing I
government
did was
cover.
check all my signals, and everything was 100%. So,
Everything, see me too. I got 4 bars. I mean, a 5G, so there's no reason.
yeah. Okay.
Um,
Anyway,
so yeah, when it comes to that, I think that you know a lot of people that are very highly religious, if aliens came and landed, it would throw a lot of people into pure chaos. And
indeed.
if you've ever listened to some of the guys that said they were on these special units that went out and recovered crashed UFO debris and alien bodies. There was, people that said their friends saw that for the first time, military members, and killed themselves right on the spot. So yeah, some people's capacities are not quite that advanced to where they can handle, something like that. I
Well,
believe, and
and that's a
I
good.
was in the Air Force for 8.5 years myself, and grew up on Air Force bases. So I've seen some pretty crazy stuff in the skies. I'll tell you that. And one of
Mhm.
my jobs to walk around the most top secret aircraft we have was an M16, and that was one of my jobs. So I'm pretty much privy to everything we had in those days. Now, what we have
Right.
now, I can only tell you, but.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting point you made too. Concerning religion. People talk about UFOs, UAPs, extraterrestrial life, but one of the things that they never talk about is how religious beliefs and the what would say the reality of these other things. If UFOs started landing all over the globe and we were greeted by extraterrestrials, religion would be automatically out the window. And I think
Yeah.
that would cause a lot of craziness. Now, if I'm not mistaken, at one point in time here, relatively recently, I think that even the Pope, the leader of the Catholic Church, had said something about the possibility of there being extraterrestrial life.
Well,
And I find that
here's the,
interesting because,
yeah.
again, going back to what I just said, if this all actually came to be and there were extraterrestrials that landed here, the leader of the largest Christian denomination in the world had already said that it's possible. So it's almost like they're, like you
What's
said,
that
drip
tell
feeding
you?
you stuff, but also force feeding you this stuff so that it's not
Right.
quite as harsh when it actually hits. I don't know. It's
Well, here's the facts that say it was about 5 years ago. One of the Roman Catholic bishops came out and said, "Yeah, the Vatican does know and believe there are alien races out there." They said that for a fact. Um, However, what I tell people, here's the problem: it does talk about all this stuff. It talks about ghosts,
mhm,
cryptids, and UFOs in the Bible. If you
yes,
read the book of Ezekiel, it talks about a fiery metal wheel that came out of the ground and flew off in the sky. What is that?
yeah,
That's a UFO. The problem is they don't teach that on a daily at church and at mass. They
right,
don't go into those books, those specific books.
hmm,
All religions in the world have stories of vimanas, UFOs. They call it something different because they didn't have the vocabulary
right,
to describe what they were seeing. All they had, they drew pictures of what they saw and they describe it as a fiery metal chariot in the
mm,
sky.
yep,
That's a UFO, guys. That's what they're talking about because they didn't
yeah,
have the vocabulary, but it's all in there in all aspects of all religions.
you are
So
correct. Yeah,
and even Christopher Columbus documented a UFO coming out of the ocean when he was coming in one of his captain's logs. If you all
I
you have
wasn't
to
aware
do
of
is
that.
oh yeah, just use critical thinking, use your common sense. When you read something that's ancient from old times, you have to remember they didn't have the vocabulary we did. They just described seeing something in the sky as a fiery metal chariot. Well,
Mm,
they know what a chariot is, and it's a moving vehicle of some sort, right? And it's
right,
flying across the sky. Well, that's what we would refer to as a UFO in today's vocabulary, right? So
sure, sure,
you just have to use your thinking cap a little bit.
yeah.
But it's been documented even in some of the most famous religious paintings around the world of Jesus and Mary Magdalene.
I
There's
was
one
just thinking of that.
where she's holding baby Jesus in a room. You can see a UFO in the sky with a beam of light coming through the window. That's a
Yeah.
UFO. The
Well, what I
baptism
was
of
thinking
Jesus.
about Mary Magdalene actually wasn't. I know what painting you're talking about, but you were
Mhm.
talking about how ghosts are in the Bible and stuff like that. And when Mary
What's the
Magdalene,
greatest ghost story ever told, Sean? What's the greatest
what's a
ghost
great?
story ever told? Huh?
You, you're talking about the Bible,
Yes.
the
Greatest
resurrection.
ghost story ever. Yeah,
Well,
resurrection of
that's
Jesus.
part of what I was
Darwinism,
getting at. Is
right?
that when Mary Magdalene met Jesus
Right.
after he'd arisen, he said, "Don't touch me, I haven't yet ascended." Was she talking
Right.
to a ghost?
Right.
you
See what
know,
I'm saying? So, you got use your brains, folks. Just because they don't teach it on every Sunday, it's in there. It's all
right?
in there, man. So
Yeah.
it also talks about, the Nephilim, the giants that walk the
Hmm.
earth. That's
Yep.
all related.
Yeah.
That's why I do what I do, because for me, all of this stuff coincides and relates to each other in one way or another. So
It does.
I don't just do hauntings. I do all of it because as an investigator, you're doing yourself a disservice. I know for a fact most people that have investigated over for any number of years have probably got an account, and I'll give you a hypothetical scenario or one that I've dealt with. So somebody calls me or messages me, emails me, say, "Hey Dave, I got some weird stuff going on in my house. Right, there's objects flying across the room. Please come and help me. I don't know what the hell's going on." So
Yeah.
I put almost everybody like that through a pretty lengthy interview process from my law
Yeah.
enforcement background, and I'll ask them the same questions 5 different ways, 3 different times, right, just
Yeah.
to see if I can catch them lying,
Hmm.
or if they're making stuff up. And if I think it's legit, I'll go there. On this one particular case, just exact same scenario. I got weird stuff going into my house, stuff's moving on its own, flying across the room, blah, 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 right? So I put them through my interview. That's all they told me. That's what was going on. When I get there, they said, well, I'm also having these dreams every night that there's these little gray beans in my room and I'm floating through my ceiling up to some freaking UFO crap. I was like, well, why didn't you tell me that the first time? So
Yeah.
that's just one scenario of many that I've dealt with over the years when there's two different types of paranormal activity going on that coincide with each other. So
Right.
got to remember that. Always think outside the box as an investigator, because you never know what you may be dealing with.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And in the course of the years that I've been doing this, I've discovered that there may be a link between the paranormal and extraterrestrial. There may be a connection between the two, but of course that's a whole branch off the old
It's a
paranormal
whole nother
tree there.
rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Whole nother
Yeah, and
rabbit
there's
hole.
so many. Everything, like you'd said, everything in some way is connected. It's all one big circle, and this universe is far too vast for there to not be something else out there. Um, whether something has been able to come here from somewhere else over the course of time, is it possible? It absolutely is. You look at even the technology that we have today, people don't understand that they have more power in their cell phones now than most fighter aircraft and space shuttles had 20 or 30, 40 years ago.
Yep.
Look at the advancements that they've made in space and in research. And I mean, we have the capability to go to Mars now. Um, Elon Musk just unleashed his troops of robots that for 30 to 40, or what do you say, 20 to 30,000 you can buy a robot that will do anything you ask it to do. Um, we don't get the ability to do that because one guy has an idea. We have absorbed so much information and so much technology from so many different sources
Yep.
over the thousands of years. If you don't believe that it is at least possible that extraterrestrials exist, that something like Bigfoot exists, that some of these cryptids exist, I don't know what to tell you. It's like, uh, if you can believe, I don't know, this might be a little touchy, but if you can believe in God, who you have not seen, but you firmly believe in, but you can be presented with evidence on all these other subjects and still not believe, there's no getting through to you.
No,
you
no.
know,
That's the
when
kid.
it
See,
comes
that's
to
the
paranormal
most honest.
investigating, I've had some really cool experiences. When it comes to psychic mediums, I'm on the fence about some.
Uh-oh, here we go. Doing it again. What in the world is going on here? The ghost in the machine, as usual.
And here we go again. Of course, as we're nearing the end of the podcast, I don't know where it cut me off at, but anyway, here's the thing: it doesn't matter what you believe in. Believe in something. Explore all this stuff that's out there. There's so much stuff that you don't know. There's so much stuff to learn. History has taught us that even the craziest story has a root in something factual. Talking about what we were just talking about with the Flatwoods Monster. Maybe it wasn't an alien they saw. Maybe it was some kind of top secret space program, and the suit that they saw this thing in, maybe it was some type of biohazard suit with with some type of lights on it. So, there's so many different things, but these are the kind of things that no matter how crazy you think they are, do some research, dig into them, read these books that Dave's talked about tonight, watch his movies, take that opportunity just to get into something new. And having said that, why don't you talk about where people can find your books, what a couple of them are, where they can find you on some of the TV shows or whatever. Where can they get more information about these topics and learn a little bit more about you?
Well, all my books are available on Amazon. You can also go to my website. It's www.davespinkspI.com. And my website has everything on it, where I'm going to be appearing at various conferences around the country. I usually update that, in the beginning of the year because I usually book out quite in advance. But all my stuff's on the website. Go to Facebook, Dave Spinks. You can find me on anything if you just Google my name. My website's on there, Instagram, Facebook, the whole 9 yards. And we got a lot of cool stuff. Like I said, me and Jen are doing ethereal excursions. You can come investigate the hauntings with us. We also do UFO excursions on occasion and
Mm-hmm.
Bigfoot stuff. So, just everything under the sun, because for me, this is what I do. When I retired from law enforcement in 2011, I decided to go public with all this stuff. People knew that I did this, but it wasn't on such a big level it is now. I wrote my first book, West Virginia Bigfoot, because that's what started me in this, and it went crazy from there. So I have a passion for this. Is the only reason I do it. There's not a lot of money in this stuff, guys. I mean, there's
No.
not. It's not about money. You have to have a real passion for it. And you'll see, I always tell people, yeah, there's a lot of people on TV doing this, but most of them are not boots on the ground investigators. They are actually actors, a lot of them. I will tell you, Jason Hawes and the boys, they do it by the book. I was on Ghost
Yep.
Nation. I was there the entire time. They are top-notch, real investigators. Um, haven't been on all the shows, but you can tell if all you have to do is look at people's bodies of work. If they weren't known before they got on TV and they weren't doing stuff in the field, they're probably what I said they were.
Right.
Just on a TV show doesn't mean you spent a lifetime investigating the paranormal. Because I've been on both, I've done both. I'll tell you firsthand, TV is really not a real investigation for the most part.
Yep.
Some of it is, some of it isn't, because you got a whole camera crew in there with you. They're chomping around, making noises and everything.
Producers run around telling you what you got to
Right.
do.
Right. So, but like I said, Jason and the guys are by the book. They do the real thing. And I really was super excited about that when I got to be on that show and see that, hey, I'm so glad at
Yep.
least these shows is the real deal,
Yep.
and they're doing it the right way. I've had a couple of chances to have my own mainstream show that I
Mm-hmm.
tore the contract up for lots of money, folks, because it
Mm-hmm.
said in the fine print, you may have to manufacture evidence if you don't get any. And that's just
Yep.
not how I do this, because it is real, and spirits and different unknown creatures, and there's weird stuff flying in the sky. It's all around, it's all around us all the time. You
Yep.
cannot discount the millions upon millions of people that have had some sort of experience throughout their life, and some have multiple experiences. Unless you were there, you can't say, "Well, they didn't see that. That didn't happen to them." How
Right.
you weren't there.
Yep.
So it's the unknown. It's three of man's greatest question. Is kind of my mantra. Are we alone in the universe? What happens when we die? And are there unknown creatures walking around us? And that's what I go by. The three of man's greatest unanswered questions, right there. We know the old captain's logs used to talk about the Kraken, right? The prime example,
Mm-hmm.
right here. They used to talk about the Kraken. That's just a mythological creature. Well, guess what happened? I think it was 2015. Japanese fishermen caught a 65-foot giant squid in
Yeah.
their fishing net. 65 feet. That's like 2.5, 3 school buses long, people. That's
No.
massive.
Yep.
2017, a brand new species of orangutan was discovered in Sumatra right under everybody's nose. Totally
Mm-hmm.
different species than the one we already knew about. And,
Yeah.
and you can go on and on and on with that kind of stuff.
Yeah. 100%. That's why I say everything has some kind of basis in fact. Every story, all of this does, and all it takes is a little research and open up your mind to some amazing stuff. And I'm glad that there's somebody like you that's involved in this field of the world of the weird, um, who's in it for the right reasons, for the answers, not for the money. Um, I appreciate that about you and about everybody that is in that same frame of mind. Because trust me, when you said there's not a lot of money in this, no, you'll spend more than you're probably ever going to make.
Oh, yeah. I've
Uh,
spent tens and tens of thousands of dollars of my own money over
yeah,
30 plus years of looking into this stuff, investigating it, researching it. Literally, if I had a quarter of what I've spent, I'd be pretty rich right now, to be honest with you.
right,
I mean,
exactly.
lots and lots of money goes out of my own pocket to go places, to interview people, to investigate these areas and claims of hauntings and cryptids and UFO sightings. I mean, it's a passion. It's not. I don't do it for the money or any other thing else, but I love sharing my experiences with people. That's why I do the podcast. I do the shows because I want people to know, hey, this is where I was. This is what I was doing. This is what I got. Make up your own mind, man.
Right.
My reputation precedes itself. People know I'm legit, and I have no reason to make up any of this stuff. I don't do it for that. I do it to share, and then I love hearing other people's experiences. Because if we
Mm-hmm.
get multiple people that experience a very similar thing, well, then you've got something there.
Yeah,
And for
absolutely.
many years, you've been around a long time too, Sean. So for many years, you couldn't even talk about this stuff in the public.
Oh
And that's
no,
why I would say TV is a double-edged sword for the paranormal in general, because yeah, it made it pop culture now, so it's much more widely accepted. We can
right.
talk about it in the open. In the old days, guess what they do to you? They burn you at the stake, man.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
They
literally. So,
put you in a psych ward.
yep.
Yeah,
So,
you're absolutely right. So yeah, well, hey, I appreciate you taking the time to be with us tonight. I also want to thank you for your service to this country,
oh yeah.
that you did in the Air Force. I I have a special place in my heart for our veterans, and also in law enforcement. I'm not sure what you did in law enforcement, but again, you're putting your uh, self out there for the safety of others, and I appreciate that. Um, well, I'll tell you what, Dave, this sounds like we need to have a chat again sometime in the future.
Sure.
I'm sure we have lots more to talk about. There's a billion different topics out there. I was showing you earlier, I picked up this book called The United States of Cryptids. I did find the Flatwoods Monster in here. Apparently, I missed it the first time.
Mhm.
But there's lots that we could talk about. And I think we could have another go around at some point in time. But I
Oh,
thank you for coming
absolutely.
out tonight. I appreciate you. Everybody that joined us on YouTube tonight, thank you for watching along with us. Be sure to head to Dave's website, head to Amazon, pick up his books, and we appreciate you tuning in. Dave, thanks a lot, and I look forward to the next time.
Yes, sir. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
There we go. And YouTube people, thank you very much for tuning in. We appreciate you. Be sure to tune in this coming Monday. We got a doubleheader episode. Gonna have JD Hill on, and then Dustin Perry right after that. So, uh, yeah, man, it was good to talk to you. I know you got your event going on there tonight, so good luck with that.
Oh yeah.
And man,
Kind of weird how the thing kept cutting off, huh? We started talking
yeah,
about government
yeah,
conspiracies and stuff.
man. And as soon as it happened, the first thing I did was I looked at all my connections, and everything
Me
was
too.
full bars,
I
Wi-Fi,
pulled down my
phone
phone and it was
signal,
like max
everything.
bar. I mean, shouldn't have been. It shouldn't have happened.
Yeah, that's just strange, but yeah, I appreciate you very much, man. Have fun tonight. Uh, on the I'm assuming you're doing an investigation too with the everybody tonight too.
Oh,
Cool.
yep,
So
yep.
yeah, hope you get some good evidence and some people in there that are new to the field maybe, and hopefully they have a great experience too.
Oh yeah, we love it, man. That's what we do. So, thanks for having me on,
Absolutely.
brother. Have a good weekend.
Hey, thanks, you too. Be safe.